Good morning. Well, we're starting our harvest time, and I wanted to share something with you. I find particularly the cucumbers and the tomatoes to be really irritating to my arms. So I found these little things. They're called, well, it's a company called Farmer Defense. They have a lot of things, and one of the things they have are these nice little protections that you could put on your arm so that then I can dig down in here in my cucumbers and not get irritated. We've had a lot of questions lately on what we do about weeds, and weeds are a big issue because we get our water from a canal, and it has weeds in it. In the past, we used the cuttings from the yard to mulch our flower beds, and that really helped. But now, with our riding lawnmower, we mulch the stuff right back into the grass, which the good part of that is the lawn is staying much greener in the heat this year because we're mulching grass back into it. The bad thing is the weeds. We have put some chips like this down in the flower bed a couple years ago, and that really has helped. But they have pretty well composted back into the soil now. So this has been a big weed year. Now, Al does do a lot of the weeding, but then I also do a little bit of spraying, particularly with this little animal right here. As you can see, it is just really prevalent, and it has big, long tendrils.
Got a heck of a root system, too.
And a heck of a root system. So those have to come up by the roots. Sometimes I'm not even successful with that, and I have to, and here you can see I sprayed one because it was so big I just couldn't get it out of the ground all in one piece. So there's several ways you can abate weeds. In summary, you can dig them up, you can spray them, or you can keep them from coming up with mulch. So this fall, we like to be as organic as we can here. We don't like to use sprays and things. So this fall, I'll be getting a bunch more chips that the county has that you can get for a very reasonable price. And we'll put a nice big layer on here to kind of stop that. This is kind of a bad area here, and it's going to have to be worked over. This fall, I'll have to dig up a bunch of stuff and probably move this little plant because it's being kind of overwhelmed by the hostas. Now, Al wanted to show you how he does the weeding because he does do a good portion of the weeding. I get down on my hands and knees, but Al has other ways that he does his weeding.
Okay, it's now going. For me, weeding falls into several categories. I got most of the weeding I do with this shovel right here. I want you to notice it's not a regular size shovel. It's got a very small head, but a full length handle. And that makes it very, very easy to get a weed right, like that one right there. Dig it up, bring it over to me, pull the weed out of the dirt. There's the weed. I'll just toss that someplace so it won't re-root, and I'll put the dirt back that I pulled out. And I do probably 80% of my weeding with that. Now let's talk about this guy, because a lot of people use a hoe to weed. I have found that it does a really good job of chopping the tops off of the weeds, and they'll be back in about 3 days. So I almost never use one of these. I'll just set this aside real quick. And another thing that's really important in life, never say never. Because there was a time in my life when I said, I'll never use one of these blasted things again. Okay, well, It's become one of my favorite garden tools. Let me show you why. After an hour or so of moving around and digging things out with this, I find it's very nice to sit down and finish weeding. And this is one of the best tools for weeding, same way, but there's a weed right there. Let me get him. Dig that up. Bring it up just like I did with the other one. And there's that weed. I'm going to get rid of him. Shake off the dirt. That gets deposited where it's not going to grow again. And the dirt goes right back. Now there's one of the things that I wanted to show you that Gretchen talked about across the yard with her weeding. And that was, well, we're going to ask you for a name because we're not quite sure what it is. But let me move over here and I'll dig this out. We call this bronze clover because we don't know what the heck to call it. On the other hand, here is a really tall version of something different. Well, that's a bad one to show you. Let's see if I can find it.
Well, I can think we can show it here.
Okay, well anyway, here is a clover type stuff. And it's, I don't know what it is, but it's almost as bad as the one I showed you. But it's just, we call it regular clover weed. And let me see if I can get that out of there.
You have to go real close down by the soil or it breaks off.
There you go. You see where that thing is? Right there. Now let me get in there with my shovel. Now this one, I want you to notice that it's got a really big taproot. Not a big root system, but a really long taproot. And if you don't get that, it will be back in about 3 days. Let me just lay that down there on the cement because it doesn't grow in cement very well. Okay, now here is what we call this bronze stuff. And it's got a incredibly large root system. Let me just get this one out right here. Okay, here we go. To notice what a small size plant we have above ground. And I'm trying to get it broken from its root supply because and if any of those roots are left in the ground, they grow. They just grow back. So here, all of this is one plant. And look at the root ball we have there. Just scatters. The root ball underground is almost as big as the plant above ground. Don't know what that is. So if there's anybody out there in viewerland can tell us what that is and what that other lighter colored thing that looks almost the same with the long taproot is, we'd like to know just for curiosity's sake. And we get that guy out of there.
Oops.
There we go. Now let's put that back. I just replanted a weed. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, we got this.
Okay, now here is another one that really grows low to the ground. I don't know what it's called. Oh, yeah, I do know what it's called. It's called sorrel. And in fact, it's poison. However, there's another plant that looks very similar that's called purslane, and it's edible. Let me see if I can find one. Okay, here's one right here. I'll get that guy here. It just has a long taproot as well. And this is one that's edible. In fact, it is part of the watercress family. It tastes really good in salads. In fact, I'm just going to bite this guy right now. Tastes really good. Really good. It has a kind of a cross between a radish and celery. But anyway, it's very tasty in salads when they're small. Now they'll grow to things like this big around. And when they're that big, they tend to get a little bit more spicy and a little tougher to chew. But when they're young, very good, very good. But we could go on and on about weeds because one of the things about having a garden is if you got a garden, you've got twice as many weeds as you ever thought you would ever encounter, and that's just the way it goes. But that's all I have for you for right now.
Well, let's go over and talk about that apple tree that needs to be staked.
Yes.
This is a little apple tree that Al's sister grafted and gave to us, and it's starting to do really good, but this year all of a sudden it is leaning back, and I don't know if it has something to do with the root systems from this stump or not, but obviously we're going to need to stake this little guy up so that he stays up. This is a cinnamon apple, and it has a little bit of taste like cinnamon. We did get one apple off of it last year, nothing this year, but that's just as well because it needs to put its strength into growing. So
okay, Gretchen.
I'm going to take the camera so that Al can stake this and you can see what he's doing.
Yep, I've got this. I've got the stake right here. You want to grab this camera and I'll just grab the stake. I've got some rope. I'll just stick that in my belt temporarily to know where to find it later. Now my question to you, Gretchen, is I could put the stake in like that and I might drive it through a root, or I could put it here at an angle like this and then put a rope across like that. Which one do you think would be better?
Why don't you, that's fine, right where you are, that'll work.
Okay, it's kind of leaning a little bit that way. I'll get over here a bit. Oh, hit the hard pan. Okay, here's my piece of rope. I want you to notice that I've got fairly heavy rope. We could just grab cord, but I think the cord would tend to cut into the tree. So what I'm going to do is just take a loop around between these branches so that it doesn't slip around too much when the wind starts blowing. And does that look about what you want to have, Gretchen?
A little more.
Okay, well, let me get this tied off here, and then I'll tie off the other one. And
we could, before winter, get some rope or some hose and put through that so that it...
That's a very good idea. Let me take a wrap around the tree now, just temporarily to get it started. Is that pretty straight up and down, or?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay.
Better than it was, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure too, yeah.
Yeah, before we get a bunch of wind and stuff, we'll get, and we'll show that what we do. We'll put a more permanent.
Right now, this is just to get it started growing, kind of straighten it up a little bit because it was getting really, really crooked. Okay, so much for that. Well, folks, that's it for this episode of Gretchen's Garden and Greenhouse. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Bye.